Jakob Ingebrigtsen has a huge problem. The Paris Olympics was his third major non-paced final, which saw him lose after being outkicked in the final stretch. First it was Whiteman, then it was Kerr, and this time it was Kerr, Nagus, and of course, Cole Hocker. Although he may be an aerobic phenom, he seems too reliant on pacers to get his fast times, and his lack of a strong kick means he's consistently beaten in the final part of the race. Conversely, whilst Jakob has not raced many 5,000 metres, he has won his last 3 championships in the 5k, and has done so with relative ease. And if you add the fact that he destroyed the 3,000 metre world record a few weeks ago, it seems pretty clear that Jakob's strength really lies in the longer distances. This has prompted some to suggest a transition to the 5,000 metres, given that his chances in the 1500 seem pretty slim these days. But to be honest, I think the suggestions that he should transition to the 5,000 metre is a major overreaction. I was never convinced by the suggestion initially, but now that I've had a proper think about it, it makes even less sense to me. In this video, I'm going to be arguing why Jakob Ingebrigtsen should not yet move up to the 5,000 metres. One thing we need to remember is that Jakob is still the fastest 1500 metre athlete in a time trial, and since the Diamond League has paces and pace lights, most of the races he will be in can be treated similar to a time trial. The world record is obviously one of Jakob's career goals. In fact, he wants to break every record from the 1500 metre all the way up to the marathon, and we'll see how far that goes. But we need to bear in mind that he's got his closest to it just a few months ago in Monaco, running his first sub 327 time with a final time of 326.73. Why would he transition to the 5,000 metres, effectively quitting his chances of breaking the 1500 and mile record when he's got so close to it in the past few months? Bear in mind that the Norwegian's winter training was interrupted due to an injury in his Achilles, so it's very possible that despite peaking for an Olympic year, he wasn't in the best form he could have been because of that injury winter. If he can bank a solid block of training for next year, then it is very possible he enters the next track season in 1500 and mile world record shape. And even if he never wins another championship in the 1500 metres, beating the world record is a huge achievement, and more impressive I think to majority of people. It seems so stupid to quit the 1500 metre after running so close to the world record. All that effort just to be an almost. And if there's one thing we know about Jakob, he's never happy with being an almost. Another point which I feel is not talked about enough is that Jakob is already winning the important 5,000 metre races comfortably. He's a 2-time world champ, 3-time European champ, and now an Olympic champion in the 5,000 metres. He may not be doing it with any record-breaking races. The majority of his races are either tactical or at a fairly moderate pace. But who cares if he's winning? Mo Farah built a career off of winning the big races when it mattered. He was never the fastest out of the field. His PB, whilst respectable at 12:53, isn't insane when you look at his achievements across his career. The main thing that he staked his career on was the fact that no one could beat him in the big races. And Ingebrigtsen isn't winning out of pure luck or against nobodies. He's won against the top dogs of the sport. Kajelcha, Gebruet, Cheptegei, Barega, and many more. Sure, this year's Olympics wasn't as stacked a field as it could have been, as it seems that most athletes focus on the 10,000 metres, but look at the world champs in 2022. He faced the who's who of the distance running world, and he still beat them easily. Why should Jakob transition to the 5,000 metres when his current training is giving him medal after medal? Why fix what isn't broke? Another counter to him transitioning is that his 1500 metre speed is what gives him an advantage over his competition in the 5000 metres. It gives him a speed advantage over most racers in the last laps of the race. And as a result, it means they have to make the pace brutal to have any real chance of beating him, which due to a variety of reasons like weather, the lack of paces, and the confidence you need to have in your own ability, it's very difficult to set such a pace in a championship race. Quitting the 1500 would mean he'd lose one of his strongest assets in the 5,000 metres. Finally, we act like Jakob has no chance of winning the 1500 metres in next year's World Champs, and I agree it's unlikely at this point. With Cole Hocker bursting onto the scene as another threat with a strong kick, it makes Jakob Ingebrigtsen's chances even worse than before. But it is possible that Jakob will see a lack of a kick as more of an issue than he did before, and will therefore target his training to improve his kick better. I've always felt that he was in a little bit of denial that it was his real weakness, given his response to the first 2 world champs, and he would always bat away the issue of him not performing well in paced races, when posed as an issue by interviewers.
How many pacers were there in Rome, and in Tokyo, and in Eugene, and in Budapest?
It will never reach the level of a Hocker or Kerr, because that sort of thing is just genetic at a certain point, but he can potentially develop it to be enough to at least hold them off. Because whilst Hocker and Kerr are definitely better at outkicking Ingebrigtsen, we need to remember that in almost all of his races, he's going to be at the front in the last 200 metres, so they need to be able to run around him. So it's not that Ingebrigtsen needs to make his kick better than Hocker or Kerr, he just needs to make it good enough that they can't overtake him. On another note, we also only have one race where we see how an informed Hocker and Kerr have interacted. Sure, they've raced before, most recently in the Zurich Diamond League, which had the big 4 in the Olympic final. But Hocker has looked leggy ever since the Olympic Games, which is fair enough. If you're going to peak for one race, then let it at least be the Olympics. And Kerr just had a nightmare of a race. I mean, he's had a very busy race schedule as we've seen compared to the other athletes, and Diamond Leagues are very boring, of course. But nonetheless, I don't think this is an accurate representation as to how these athletes will perform in the big races. We may even see both of them take each other out trying to run around Ingebrigtsen. We'll just have to wait and see. Because when you have more than one person trying to kick around a front runner, it gets very crowded very quickly. I do want to make clear at this stage that I do not think it's likely that Ingebrigtsen will beat Hocker or Kerr, but treating things as if he's guaranteed to lose, although nothing will change in the next year, is not the way to go in my opinion. Who knows, we could even see a drop in form or an injury in both of these athletes, leaving Jakob as a clear favourite for the 2025 World Champs. I think the Grand Slam track series will also have a play to part, given that 3 of the members of the Big Four in Ngus, Hocker, Kerr and Ingebrigtsen will be racing as part of that series. The key reason I think Grand Slam track is going to be relevant is because these athletes are going to be focusing on the 800 metres next season as well as the 15. And this means that apart from having to focus on extra competitions, they will potentially lose some of that 5,000 metre strength that has allowed them to be so effective in the 1500 metres. Both Kerr and Hocker have spoken about training much more like 15 5k runners instead of 8:15 runners this season, and this seems to have allowed them to narrow the gap in fitness between them and Ingebrigtsen. Whilst it's clear they're not aerobically fitter than Ingebrigtsen in a time trial, the fact that Ingebrigtsen is always the de facto pacer for these non-pace races means that they're able to conserve energy whilst Ingebrigtsen is using extra, which when combined with the fact that they focused on their 5,000 metre strength and their aerobic base has allowed them to keep up with Ingebrigtsen and have the energy to outkick him in the final stretch. I feel as though that now they are forced to focus on the 800 metre as well, they may have to lose some of that 5,000 metre strength that has allowed them to be so competitive in the 15. Sure, 800 metre training will improve all of their kicks, but outkicking Jakob has never been the issue. The issue is always holding on long enough to be able to outkick him in the first place, and the best way to address that issue is by building that aerobic engine through longer distance training, not the 800 metres. It may be that signing for Grand Slam track will have a huge effect on their ability to race a fast 1500 metres effectively, even if it improves their strength in tactical races. But the thing is, we know that if Ingebrigtsen is in any race, that 1500 metre race is not going to be slow and tactical. There's only 2 arguments as to why Ingebrigtsen should quit the 1500 metres that I can think of. If he was in razor thin finishes with his opponents in the 5000 metres, then now I'd understand the logic more of focusing on the 5k, or else his competition may beat him the next time. I think it's possible Jakob loses if the 3 Ethiopians or the 2 Ugandans work together to set a blistering pace like they did in the 10,000 metres. But even then, Ingebrigtsen's current personal best is 12:48, which is very quick and it's 3 years old. He could most likely run faster at this stage if he was made to. And unless we see these guys set a world record pace, which they almost certainly won't do due to factors that I've mentioned, I think Jakob will just sit in the middle of the pack, conserve energy whilst the others do the work, and then move in and outkick the worn out front runners in the final stretch, just like he's done in his last 3 major championship races. Plus, this is assuming the worst case scenario for Jakob. He's won his last 3 global championships by like 10 metres in each race. All transitioning at this stage would do is increase his lead, which is of course always a nice thing, but unless you're breaking records, no one cares if you beat the competition by an extra 3 seconds compared to last time. The only other reason to focus on the 5,000 metres is if he wanted to chase Cheptegei's world record, which of course is one of his long-term career goals, and maybe in a few years that will be his main aim, but it doesn't make sense for him to do it now unless he's decided he does not care about the 1500 metre record, or he's realised that it's not within his reach, both of which I think are very unlikely. And the guy is only 24 years old, when most 5,000 metre runners will peak around their late 20s to early 30s, so he's got plenty of time before he needs to start worrying about Cheptegei's world record. Now, we could be here in a year's time where Jakob has lost another 1500 metre world champs, and despite a good winter was unable to really improve his personal best by much in the 15, with that world record still looking elusive. And on top of that, in the 5,000 metre world champs, the East Africans teamed up, set a blistering pace in the 5k that Jakob was not able to keep up, meaning he lost both the 1500 world champs and the 5,000 world champs. This is the only scenario where I see him moving up to the 5k actually making sense. If A, the world record looks unbeatable for him, B, the 5,000 metre is becoming too fast for him to stay with the top contenders, and C, if he loses yet another world champs in the 15. Then I can see the argument for him moving up, because in this scenario, Jakob is stuck being a B+ athlete in both events, getting 2nd or 3rd place in the events instead of 1 gold medal. And of course he wants to win, not be 2nd class or worse. Transitioning to the 5,000 metre in this case could be the difference he needs to start winning races again. But given that only one of these 3 factors is likely at all, him losing the next 1500 world champs, there is no reason at this point for Jakob Ingebrigtsen to transition to the 5,000 metres. If you want to see exactly how Ingebrigtsen won the 5,000 metre Olympic final so dominantly, then click on this video here. Thank you very much for watching guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy training.